यशोदनन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जना यमुनातीरावनचारी यमुनातीरावनचारी जय राधा माधवा कुंज विहारी जय राधा माधवा कुंज विहारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी यशोदनन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जना यमुनातीरावनचारी यमुनातीरावनचारी जय राधा माधवा कुंज विहारी जय राधा माधवा कुंज विहारी जय कृष्ण बलराम जय कृष्ण बलराम कृष्ण बलराम जय कृष्ण बलराम जय गौरनिताय जय गौरनिताय गौरनिताय जय गौरनिताय जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय विष्णुपाद परमंस परिव्राजकतरिष्ठोत्तर सतत श्री श्रीमद डिवाइन ग्रेस श्री भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी शील प्रभुपाद की जय जय विष्णुपाद परमंस परिव्राजकतरिष्ठोत्तर सतत श्री श्रीमद डिवाइन ग्रेस शील भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज की जय अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय ग्रंथराज श्रीमद्भागवतम की जय श्री श्री कृष्ण बलराम की जय श्री श्री गौर निताय की जय हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय जगत गुरु शील प्रभुपाद की जय निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Reading from Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 23, text number 38. Tasmin alupta mahima priyaya anurakto. Tasmin alupta mahima priyaya anurakto. Tasmin alupta mahima priyaya anurakto. Vidyadhari vir upachirna vapur vimane. Vidyadhari vir upachirna vapur vimane. Vidyadhari vir upachirna vapur vimane. Babhraja utkacha kumud ganavan apichas. Babhraja utkacha kumud ganavan apichas. Babhraja utkacha kumud ganavan apichas. Tarabher avrita iva udupatir nabha stha. Tarabhiravrita iva udupatir nabhastha. Tarabhiravrita iva udupatir nabhastha. Tasminnalupta mahima priyayanurakto. Vidyadhari virupachirna vapur vimane. Babhraja utkacha kumudganavan apichas. Tarabhiravrita ivodupatir nabhastha. Tasminnalupta mahima priyayanurakto. Vidyadhari virupachirna vapur vimane. Babhraja utkacha kumudganavan apichas. Tarabhiravrita ivodupatir nabhastha. Tasmin, in that, alupta, not lost, mahima, glory, priyaya, with his beloved consort, anuraktaha, attached, vidyadharibihi, by the Gandharva girls, upachirna, waited upon, vapuhu, his person, vimane, on the airplane. Babhraja, he shone. Utkacha, open. Kumudganavan, the moon which is followed by rows of lilies. Abhichyaha, very charming. Tarabhihi, by stars. Avritaha, surrounded. Iva, as. Udupatihi, the moon, the chief of the stars. Nabhastaha, in the sky. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Though seemingly attached to his beloved consort while served by the Gandharva girls, the sage did not lose his glory, which was mastery over his self. In the aerial mansion, Kardamumuni with his consort shone as charmingly as the moon in the midst of the stars in the sky, which causes rows of lilies to open in ponds at night. Kindly repeat. Though seemingly attached to his beloved consort, while served by the Gandharva girls, the sage did not lose his glory, which was mastery over his self. In the aerial mansion, Kardamumuni with his consort shone as charmingly as the moon in the midst of the stars in the sky, which causes rows of lilies to open in ponds at night. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The mansion was in the sky, and therefore the comparison to the full moon and stars is very beautifully composed in this verse. Kardamumuni looked like the full moon, and the girls who surrounded his wife, Devahuti, seemed just like the stars. On a full moon night, the stars and the moon together form a beautiful constellation. Similarly, in that aerial mansion in the sky, Kardamumuni with his beautiful wife and the damsels surrounding them appeared like the moon and stars on a full moon night. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnanatimidandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasyatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim yat kripatamaham vande Shri Gurum Deenataranam. So beautiful simile here. Tarabhir avrita iva udupati. Udupati means the moon. Udu means actually stars. Patihi means the master. So Udupatihi means the chief of all the stars, which refers to the moon. So Tarabhir avrita, just like the moon on a clear Purnima, if the sky is very clear, there are no clouds. In the night, if we look at the sky, we can see the full moon surrounded by the stars, which looks very beautiful, the constellation to look at in the clear sky in the night. So, Tarabhir avritaha iva udupatihi, nabhastaha in the sky, just like the moon surrounded by the stars, looks very beautiful. And not only does the moon look very beautiful in the sky surrounded by the stars, on the earth what happens? Kumud Ganavan, that moon is followed by rows of lilies. During the daytime, the lotuses bloom. The lotuses bloom in the sunlight. In the night, the lotuses, they all close up, and it's the lilies which bloom in the night. So, when there is good moonlight, the lilies bloom very beautifully. The lilies are also beautiful flowers. So, just like the moon surrounded by the stars and followed by the lilies, blooming lilies, just like that scene looks very beautiful. Suppose you are standing in the middle of the night in a garden full of lilies, and there is a pond filled with lilies, and there up in the sky there is a clear sky, there is a beautiful moon surrounded by the stars. What a scenery, beautiful scenery it is. In a similar manner, in the sky, in the palace, the flying palace which was created by Kardama Muni, surrounded by his wife and the Gandharva girls, appeared as beautiful. It was a very pleasing sight to the eyes. So, why is the Bhagavatam glorifying this? Priyaya Anuraktaha. Kardama Muni was very attached to his beloved consort, to Devahuti. So, actually, if we see, the Bhagavatam always condemns the attraction between man and woman. But here, Kardama Muni is a sage, he is a Muni. And a Muni is supposed to be master of his senses. He is supposed to be fully self-controlled. He is supposed to be fully renounced. He is supposed to be above the sex attraction between man and woman. But Kardama Muni here is exactly acting in an opposite way to a yogi. He is Priyaya Anuraktaha. He is very attached to his beautiful dear wife, and he is enjoying in the midst of so many beautiful Gandharva girls. What is this kind of yogi? If somebody calls himself a sadhu, and you go to his ashram and you find him surrounded by many beautiful girls, and he is enjoying with his wife, what will you say? Hey, this is bogus sadhu. Isn't it? We can see even in our country, even today, that understanding is there among the common men. If a man and a woman in the outside world, if they have an illicit connection, outside of marriage they have a relationship, nobody bothers in today's age. Okay, they are two adults, they are having a consenting relationship, what is there? But you will see so many so-called sadhus, when they get caught with another woman, some woman disciple or somebody in a compromising position, immediately case is put against them in the police, and they have to go to court and so many things. And there was one case like this some time back, where a driver of that sadhu, he caught pictures of this sadhu engaging in a sexual act with one of his woman disciples, and he put it on the internet, and then it became a big there was a lot of reaction in the society. People were all outraged, and there was a case against this so-called Swami. And when the case went to the court, he said it was a consensual relationship. So people's opinion was divided. They said the two adults are consenting, what is the problem for us? But there were others saying, no, he is a sadhu, how can he engage in this act? So it is naturally understood that a sadhu means he has to be renounced, he has to keep a distance with women, he should not have anything to do with sex relationship. This is naturally accepted. But here we are seeing Kardama Muni, and actually in the Bhagavatam and in all the Vedic scriptures also, that is the stricture given. In fact, Griha Medi, any man, even if he is not renounced, if he is in the household life, and if he is too much attached to his family, and if he does not take up sannyas after 50 years of age, if he does not give up his home and go out of his home, go to the forest and renounce his house, family and all that, if he doesn't do that after 50 years, Panchashordhum Vanam Brajayat, if he doesn't do that after 50 years, in the Vedic scriptures he is condemned. In fact, even Shankaracharya also in his Bhaja Govindam, he says, a man when he becomes old, if he continues to remain in his family, he will be treated like a dog. He is no more than a dog living in the house. So these are all the strictures given in the Vedas. So the A relationship between man and woman as husband and wife or as lover is always condemned in the Vedas. It is looked down upon in the Vedas. Okay, because some people are not able to control themselves, they cannot be lifetime brahmacharis. As a concession, okay, for 25 years you remain as a grahastha, have a responsible wife, and that too, not become too much attached to your family and wife and all that, but as a matter of duty, as a grahastha, you take care of your family. After 50 years, you give up and go to the forest. This is the injunction. But now here we are seeing Kardama Muni is behaving in a totally opposite way. He is a Muni, he is a sage, he has renounced everything, he is living in the forest, he is living in a hermitage, living a very austere life, did tapasya for 10,000 years, had darshan of Lord Vishnu personally, and after all that, Anurakta Diyaha Priyaya, he is sage. He has given it up and created a very opulent palace. And not only is he enjoying with his wife there, he has also created so many Gandharva girls who are surrounding him. And it is mentioned here, Vidya Dharibir Upachirna Vapur. They are taking care of all his necessities. How is this possible? How do we understand this? Actually, these kind of instances in the Bhagavatam, and the Bhagavatam is also glorifying this. Bhagavatam is not condemning. There are examples in the Bhagavatam like the King Puranjana and Yayati, where their lives being so much attached to their wives is also described, and that is condemned. And in the end, they all give up their attachment to their respective wives, and they become renounced, and they become very self-realized and go back to Godhead, and all those kind of instances are there. But here, the description of Kardama Muni and Devahuti surrounded by all the Gandharva girls is not condemned. It is said here, Alupta Mahima. Kardama Muni, even though he was like this, his glory, which is mastery over his self, was not lost. Very interesting. How do we understand this? What happens is, these kind of verses in the Bhagavatam, the Mayavadis cannot explain. So, according to the Mayavadis, a man can achieve self-realization, he can achieve liberation, mukti, only when he becomes totally renounced. He has to take sannyas and he has to be totally detached from all kinds of sex life. There can be no association with a woman. Then only he can achieve mukti. Now here is a Mukta Purusha. Here is a Mukta Purusha, yogi, who is a Mahayogi, not even a yogi, he is a Mahayogi, and he is indulging with his wife, surrounded by so many girls. The Mayavadis, how can they explain this? They cannot explain this, because a man in knowledge, a man who has understood is not the body, is spirit, soul, who is Alupta Mahima, who has mastery over his self, cannot indulge in these kind of activities. But in bhakti, something else happens. So to understand this, there is an instance in the Srimad-Bhagavatam in the first canto, where there is a description of the Supreme Lord. See, in the case of Mayavadis, they worship Brahman. And so because they worship Brahman, the Brahman is completely without attributes, without emotions, there are no qualities and all those kind of things. So they also have to be like that. Whatever is your goal, naturally, if, like they say, like king, like, like master, like servant. So, whatever the qualities of the master are there, naturally the servants also imbibe. If the master is very honest, he is of very high integrity, naturally the servants also, who are his subordinates, they also become like that. If the master is very corrupt, he is very dishonest, what happens is followers also become like that. So, when they worship Brahman, when the Mayavadis worship Brahman, Brahman is without any qualities, without any emotions, without any attachments, and full of knowledge, full of chit. So, the Mayavadis also, the Jnanis also have to be like that. Now, in the case of Bhakti Yogis, who is their worshipable Lord, especially for the Krishna devotees? It is the Supreme Lord Krishna. And how does Krishna conduct himself? That is explained in the Srimad-Bhagavatam in the first canto, when Krishna returns to Dwaraka after the Kurukshetra Yuddha. After the Kurukshetra war is completed, Yudhishthira Maharaj is coronated, and then Parikshit is protected in the womb of Uttara. After all that, Krishna left Hastinapura and went back to Dwaraka. When he came to Dwaraka, what happened? What was the scene there? All the citizens came out to receive him. All the description is there in the Bhagavatam. All the Brahmanas, all the citizens came, all the women folk came, they all received Krishna, and they were very happy to receive him back. And then there is a description of Krishna entering his palaces, his 16,108 palaces. So when Krishna entered the palaces, all the queens, all the 16,000 queens were waiting to receive Krishna. So how are they waiting to receive Krishna? Uddama bhava pishiramala valguhasa vridavaloka nihato madanopi yasam. So these women folk, the queens of Dwaraka, they were not ordinary personalities. Sammuhya chapamajahat pramadottamasta. They were all pramadottama. Pramada means beautiful woman. Extremely beautiful woman is called Pramada, because she can incite attraction in the heart of a woman. Naturally, a woman is beautiful. Any man will get attracted to her. So these queens of Dwaraka, they were Pramada Uttama. They were the best of the most exquisitely beautiful women. Even Apsaras would pale in comparison to the queens of Dwaraka. They were so beautiful. Not only were they beautiful, they were of very good character also. And they were very loving towards Krishna. So when Krishna entered the palace, all these queens, Vrida Avaloka, with great shyness, out of their corners of their eyes, they were glancing upon Krishna. And Valguhasa, with a slight smile on their face. So actually, for any man in this world, a woman's shyness is the most attractive for him. Today, modern day world, if you talk about shyness of a woman, they'll say, hey, this is all antiquated, this is all primitive thinking. Woman should be independent, she should be confident, she should be outgoing, extrovert, etc., etc. But the fact is, human psychology is, a man's heart can be captured by a woman who exhibits shyness. This is the reality. No matter what you do, how much ever you may develop, how much ever you may progress, how much ever the women may become independent, it's not attractive to a woman's heart. A man's heart. So these women folk of Dwaraka, they were very loving, they were exquisitely beautiful, and they were very loving to Krishna. And all their feminine overtures in shyness in front of Krishna when they exhibited, it was, and they were very Uddama Bhava, they were also very sober, they were not frivolous. So a very sober woman, very shy, very loving towards her husband, this kind of behavior by woman will capture the heart of the husband. So such a situation is Pishuna Amala. Their Amala, their love for Krishna was Amala, it was untainted, it was pure. And this kind of situation is Pishuna, is very exciting. Exciting for whom? For Madana, for Cupid, because this kind of situation, Cupid immediately attacks, immediately releases his arrows of flowers, and he generates attraction in the heart of the man and the woman towards each other. This is how Madana works in this world. So Madana, Cupid, is always waiting for an opportunity where a beautiful woman and a man come in contact with each other, and so that he can start his work. But in the case of Krishna and the queens of Dwaraka, what happened? Nihato Madanopi. Instead of Madana's arrows, Cupid's arrows, instead of going and attacking Krishna's heart, he started attacking him. Nihataha Madanapi. Madana became attracted towards the women folk. So, what happened? Sammuhya chapamajahat. He got frustrated. I am releasing my arrows. Instead of going and hitting Krishna's heart, it is coming and afflicting me. So, this bow has become useless. He gave up his bow. Sammuhya chapamajahat. But then, so you can imagine the beauty of the queens of Dwaraka was such that even Kamadeva became attracted to them. Kamadeva normally doesn't get attracted to beautiful women. He causes attraction in another man's heart. But in the case of the queens of Dwaraka, even Cupid, Kamadeva himself became bewildered. Now what was happening in the heart of Krishna, so you can imagine what would have been going on in Krishna's heart. But Yasyendriyam vimatitum kuhakair na chekuhu. with all these feminine overtures, these queens of Dwaraka, whose beauty was such that it was bewildering even to Madana, even to Cupid, they could not, yasyendriyam vimatitum na shekuhu. They could not, even the slightest bit of agitation, they could not create in Krishna's heart. Krishna was totally unaffected. But to the external eyes, how was Krishna looking? Krishna was behaving exactly like a henpecked husband. So, for the external eyes, for the lokaha, for the people of the external world, yadayam manyate loko, what they were thinking when they saw Krishna being in the 16,000 palaces, behaving exactly like a henpecked husband, yadayam manyate loko, he asangam api sanginam. Even though Krishna was asangam, he was totally detached. They were thinking he is sanginam. He has become so much attached to his wives, he has become a henpecked husband. Atmaupanyena manujam vyaprinmanam ato abudaha. All the abudaha, unintelligent people, they thought, just like me, Krishna has also become a henpecked husband. So, you can, unintelligent people, uninformed people, ignorant people, when they see the behavior of Krishna in relating with the queens of Dwaraka or with the gopis in Vrindavan, they think Krishna is an immoral person. They think Krishna has become overcome. Krishna's heart has been overcome by the force of kama, by the force of lust. This is what ignorant people think. So what actually is happening? The Bhagavatam is saying, etad ishanam ishasya. This display of pastime by Krishna, living in the midst of 16,108 queens in all those palaces, exactly like an ordinary man, attracted totally to his wife, is actually a display of the supremacy of the Supreme Lord. Etad ishanam ishasya. Of the Supreme Controller, ishasya, ishanam. This is his supremacy. How do we understand this? Very contradictory. So, the Supreme Lord, being the Supreme Controller, must be above all this. He must not be attracted to his queens. He must not be in the midst of all these beautiful queens. He should be very sober. He should be very renounced, detached, and all these kind of things. But here Krishna is exchanging such wonderful rasas, such wonderful mellows of love between himself and his wives. So, how can this be a display of the supremacy of the Supreme Lord? Etad ishanamisasya prakritistopi na yujyate. So, the display of the supremacy of the Supreme Lord is exhibited prakritistopi, even though he is in the middle of Prakriti, even though he is when he descends to this material world, he is in the midst of Maya Shakti, in the midst of the Maya energy. Na yujyate, he is the least affected by it. He is not at all affected by it. He is untouched by Maya. He is untouched by the three modes of material nature. He is untouched by the force of lust. Etad ishanamisasya prakritistopi na yujyate. And not only, the Bhagavatam does not stop there. It says, because we have to understand, yatha sadatmastair, yatha buddhis tadashraya. Just like not only the Supreme Lord Krishna is like this, that even though he is in the midst of so many beautiful women, even though he descends into this material world, he is totally unaffected by it. Even tad ashraya, those who have taken shelter of Krishna, those who are his pure devotees, sadatmastair, they also are eternally fixed up in their conception of body, of not being the body, but of being the spirit soul. And so even they are unaffected by Prakriti. So not only Krishna, those who have taken shelter of Krishna also attain the similar quality like Krishna. Even though they are in this material world, they are unaffected by the three modes of material nature. They are unaffected by the forces of the body. The forces of the body dictate one. What are the forces of the body? In the Nectar of Instruction, Upadeshamrita, Srila Rupa Goswami says, Vacho Vegam, Manasa Krodha Vegam, Udaropastha vegam, jihva vegam. These are all the forces in the body. The force, the urge to speak, the urge to be heard, the urge to be respected, the urge of the mind to get angry. When a person gets angry, when some desire of his frustrated, the Bhagavatam says, he becomes captured like he becomes captured like anger. And that anger is like something which is falling out of the sky, out of nowhere. Suddenly anger will come and fall upon you, as if it is falling out of the sky. That is the way it is. People are controlled so much by anger. And they are controlled by the forces of the tongue and the belly to eat very tasty food stuff. And for that, what do? They engage in slaughtering animals, poor animals, so extensively, simply for satisfying the tongue and the belly. Otherwise, for the person, for the human being to live a healthy life, animal food is not required. With plant food, and a person can lead a very healthy life. He can get all the nutrition required for the body. But no, the tongue and the belly are forcing a person that no, you have to kill the animals and you have to eat their flesh. And not only, and when one does this, what happens is the genitals get agitated, and so he has to engage in sexual acts. So like this, the human body, Prabhupada says, is like a pushing machine. It is constantly pushing the man to engage in sinful activities to satisfy these urges which are generated within the body. These urges nobody can control. Nobody is in control of these urges. Anger, when it comes, it will come on its own. You cannot control it. When the force comes, when the urge comes to speak, you cannot control it. You want to speak. And when you are not allowed to speak, what happens is you get frustrated and you get angry. All this you cannot control. And when the tongue demands something to eat, you cannot control. When the genitals demand sex, you cannot control. So these urges are unstoppable forces which are generated within the body, which are inbuilt into the body. No amount of material education, no amount of gender sensitization, no amount of sex education, no amount of material education can overcome these forces. This is the reality. But a person who has become a devotee of Krishna, Yatha Buddhis Tad Ashraya, those who have taken shelter of Krishna, they attain the quality of Krishna, which is Prakritistope na yujyate. Such a highly elevated, pure devotee of Krishna, he may remain in the midst of many beautiful women, but he will remain unaffected. This is exactly what is being described about Kardamamuni. You can see, Tasmin alupta mahima, his glory of being a master of his self was not lost to Kardamamuni, even though he was surrounded by so many beautiful Gandharva girls. Actually, that's another thing which we can understand. Here, the Bhagavatam says, Priyaya anuraktaha. He was attached to his wife only, Devahuti only. Although he was surrounded by so many beautiful Gandharva girls, he was not attached to them. He did not get attracted to them. He was attracted only to Devahuti. Not that the Gandharva girls were unattractive. Gandharva girls are very, very attractive. Their beauty is far beyond the beauty which you can see on this material earth, on this earthly planet. So, but Kardamamuni was not affected by them. He was attached only to Devahuti. So, the display of attachment by Kardamamuni to Devahuti also is not because his heart is overcome by lust. It is because he has a duty to perform. He has obtained a boon from the Supreme Lord Vishnu that he will become his son. So, he as a husband, he has a duty towards his wife. When the wife is expressing her desire that she wants a child, it is the duty of the husband to fulfill that desire as per the Shastras. And so, therefore, and for procreation, in order to beget children, the utilization of lust is essential. So, therefore, Kardamamuni is manifesting lust to the desired extent of begetting children in his wife. So, to that extent only Kardamamuni is displaying lust. So, he is fully in control of the lust also which he is experiencing. That is what it means when it says, alupta mahima. He did not lose his glory, which was mastery over his self. Just like Krishna says in the Bhagavad-gita, kurmonganiva sarvashaha. Just like a tortoise can withdraw all its limbs at will, and whenever it wants, it can pull its limbs out of its shell and display them. This is the unique feature of the tortoise. Whenever the tortoise is in danger, it will withdraw all its limbs into its shell and it will remain there. And when the danger is gone, again it will bring out its limbs. Its limbs, head, everything will get withdrawn into its shell. This is a unique feature of a tortoise. So, the tortoise can exhibit, can bring out its limbs whenever it wants, and it can withdraw it whenever it wants. In a similar way, a yogi can display lust whenever he wants, whenever it is required. Kardama Muni saw that it was required for him to beget children, and so therefore he exhibited that lust. And we will see later, when the moment Kapila is born, Kardama Muni says, my job is over. He immediately leaves his house and goes off. So there is no real uncontrolled attachment in his heart for his wife. What is required, he is displaying for the carrying out of his duties. That's all. So that is why the Bhagavatam is saying, this kind of display of lust by Kardama Muni is highly glorified. It is Tasmin Alupta Mahima. It is not that Kardama Muni has fallen down from his position of a yogi. Kardama Muni continues to remain in his glorious position, because as Krishna says in the Bhagavad-gita, Dharma viruddho kamosmi bharatarshava. When lust is displayed which is not contrary to the principles of religion, it is glorified. Because the outcome of such display of lust is glorious offspring, glorious children are begotten. Like we are seeing how by the display of this kind of Dharma viruddha kama by Kardama Muni resulted in the Supreme Personality of Godhead incarnating himself into this material world. Therefore, this display of lust by Kardama Muni is glorious. It is not like the lust displayed by an ordinary conditioned soul who is not in control of his senses. It is completely different. So, like this, we have to understand that a devotee of Krishna can engage in any activity which is necessary for satisfying the Supreme Lord. He is not bound by material laws, material rules and regulations. He is not under the control of the three modes of material nature. Once one becomes a pure devotee of Krishna, one is completely beyond the influence of the three modes of material nature, and therefore he can act in any capacity. He can act even as a grihastha. Even in a grihastha life, he can act in such a way as to produce, as to beget wonderful children who will also be devotees, or in the case of Kardama Muni, who is an exalted pure devotee himself, it can become the cause of the descent of the Supreme Lord as an incarnation. So these are some of the points which we can understand, and therefore the Bhagavatam is describing in such poetic, wonderful words of how Udupatir Iva, Tarabhir Avrita Udupatir Iva. So he looked so glorious and wonderful, like the moon surrounded by the stars and followed by the lilies, blooming lilies. Such a beautiful description to describe the relationship between Kardama Muni and Devahuti. So therefore, the Devahuti's and Kardama Muni's life, their conjugal life is highly glorified. So this is how we will see how in Bhakti Yoga, these kind of contradictory, apparently contradictory behavior exhibited by great personalities can easily be explained in a proper, understandable way. So Mayavadis, with their philosophy of Jnana, impersonal Brahman and all that, will be unable to explain all this. They will have to, the only way they can explain this is tell that these are all allegories, and they have to give some very twisted explanation which will be completely beyond all logic and reasoning. So that is why Shankaracharya also did not touch upon the Bhagavatam, because it will be too tough to explain these kind of examples which are given in the Bhagavatam. So therefore he never touched the Bhagavatam. He only, Bhagavad-gita you can twist, it is possible to twist. The Vedanta Sutra, even easier to twist. Bhagavad-gita is also very difficult to twist, but at least there is some scope. Bhagavatam, practically impossible. That's why Shankaracharya never dared to touch the Bhagavatam. So, if we go by the Siddhanta of the Vaishnavas, that's the complete Siddhanta where everything can be explained in a proper manner according to Shastras and according to spiritual standards. So, we will stop here. If there are any questions or comments, we can discuss. Yes, please. Sadachar Prabhu.
So, why did Kardamuni want Krishna as a son?
That is explained in the previous chapter when he prayed to Krishna for, prayed to Vishnu for child. So, after the Lord appeared before him, Kardamuni expressed he was feeling very shameful. He said, you are the Supreme Lord, I have worshipped for you for a material desire, to have a wife who will be a suitable consort for me. So, he was himself feeling that this is not, I should not be doing this. But then what to do? His heart has become afflicted with that desire. So, that desire had captured his heart. But because he is a great pure devotee, so he did not want to go to anyone else to fulfill that desire. He said, whatever my desire is, I will worship Vishnu only. And also one more thing we have to understand is that Kardamuni was ordered by his father, who was his own spiritual master, Brahmaji, to procreate. So, on the one hand, it was the order of Brahmaji, and he wanted to follow that order, and he also had that desire. So, it is not that when a father, even though he may be a great personality like Brahma, or he may be your own spiritual master, if he orders you to procreate, it is not necessary that you have to always follow that. The four Kumaras, Sanaka, Sanatana, Sanat and Sanandana, they refused to follow the order of Brahmaji. They said, no, we want to remain brahmacharis, we want to liberate ourselves. So, that instruction of Brahmaji to Kardamuni to procreate is also not an absolute spiritual instruction like that. But Brahmaji was himself had a duty to perform in filling up this material world with various kinds of living entities. So, he instructed all his sons, who are all great rishis, and he told them, you fill the world with all the living entities. So, he ordered Kardamuni also. So, Kardamuni, because he was not as elevated as the four Sanat Kumaras, he carried that desire that, okay, I should do this. So, now how to fulfill that desire? He did not want to go to any of the devatas. He said, no, I will worship Vishnu. So, although Kardamuni knew that this is not the right thing to ask of the Supreme Lord, still, because that desire was in his heart, he asked. So, Prabhupada explains in that purport that why did Kardamuni not ask for liberation when Vishnu appeared before him? So, Prabhupada says in the purport that liberation, going back to Godhead, is not for everyone. It is for very, very rare souls. Even a greatly elevated yogi like Kardamuni may not be qualified to go back to Godhead. So, going back to Godhead is not such an ordinary thing that a yogi, he will perform yoga for 10,000 years and he will go back to Godhead. Not necessary. So, it requires a real kripa of a pure devotee to be able to go back to Godhead. Otherwise, there are many pure devotees even within this material world. Ganesha is a pure devotee, Shiva is a pure devotee, Brahma himself is a pure devotee. They all don't have permanent residence in the spiritual world. They are always in the material world, serving the orders of Krishna. So, not all pure devotees also go back to Godhead. That also we have to understand. So, going back to Godhead, you have to understand is not an ordinary thing. It's very, very rare. That is what Prabhupada is offering to us. Simply follow me, I'll take you back to Godhead. So, what Prabhupada is offering is not something which is very cheap. It is extremely rare. Even devatas, even mahayogis cannot attain that. That is what Prabhupada is giving us. So, you have to understand the value of what Prabhupada is giving. It is so invaluable. It is so rare. That is how we have to understand. And so, that example of Kardamuni also gives us an appreciation of pure devotional service, which is taking us back to Godhead. Is that okay? You had something? Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Like Kardamuni, like by his yogic power, so thousands of Gandharva girls are appeared to serve the Devahoti. So is there, by the yogic power, they have descended from Gandharva Loka, or he has created as the way he has created the man's and...
It could be both. He could have, there may be living entities by their karma, they have to take birth as Gandharva girls. At that time, he exhibited his yogic power and all of them came down. It could be that also. It could be a combination of both, that Gandharva girls descended from there to serve Kardama Muni because of his yogic power. Could be multiple reasons. Anyway, that's a secondary thing. That's not very important thing to this one. Either way, because he cannot create something out of his own. Already living entities are already part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. They are there. Out of their karma, according to their karma, whatever people come to have to be brought together. At that time, display of Kardama Muni's yogic power also happens, and the karma of the jivas who have to take that bodies of Gandharva girls also coincides. All these things are happening together.
Thank you.
Is that okay? Yes, please.
Hare Krishna. When Lord wants to come to material world, he also follows the material, he
Laws.
has to accepting the
Laws of dharma.
Not like when Lord wants to take birth, so he has to enter the mother's womb in the like how a soul takes birth. So Lord also follows the same similar.
No. What happens is the Lord accepts two living entities as his father and mother. That is because Krishna wants to satisfy the desire of the living entity to act as the Lord's parents. So Kardama Muni had the desire, I want the Supreme Lord to become my son. So the Lord said, okay, I will satisfy your desire. And so he descended. But when he descends, he doesn't descend like the ordinary way. Of course, he is not limited that he cannot do that. He can do that also. He can take the shelter of Kardama Muni's semen and enter the womb of Devaki and come out like an ordinary jiva also. Why should we limit him that he cannot do that? He can do that also. So normally when it comes to Shakti Avesha avatars, they appear like that. But when the Supreme Lord Krishna himself descends, how does he appear? He appeared first in the heart of Devaki and first in the mind of Vasudeva. From the mind of Vasudeva, he transferred himself to the mind of Devaki. From Devaki's mind, he transferred himself to her heart. And then he transferred himself to her womb. And then when the time for appearance came, he directly appeared out of her womb. Krishna appeared when Devaki was about 8 months pregnant. She had not completed the full term of pregnancy. So he appeared as a premature child. Because he wanted a full Kamsa. Because Kamsa was thinking, still time is there. We will increase all the guards who are there and all those kind of things when after 9 months is over. So Krishna appeared a little early. He fooled Kamsa. So Krishna appeared directly from the heart of Vasudeva and Devaki, and suddenly he appeared there as a 400 child. So Krishna can appear in any way he wants. When he appeared as Narasimha, how did he appear? There is no father, there is no mother. He appeared out of the pillar. Because the Lord is present in Andantarasam, Paramanujayantarasam. He is present in every atom of this universal manifestation, and he is present along with the jiva in each and every living entity's heart also. So for him to appear in whichever way, it is his sweet will. He can appear in whatever way he wants. So the Lord's appearance is not limited to the way we have to appear, but the Lord is not that Lord cannot appear that way also. He can appear that way also. It is his choice. By his sweet will, he chooses which way he wants to appear, and he appears. That's how we have to understand. Okay? So we'll stop here. Granthara Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo.